Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's definitely been a while since I've been live on here with you guys. I took a little break just to focus on myself, I guess, and my health, my mental health, my environment. So I just took a little bit of a break from posting. But you guys have stuck with me. I can see that a lot of you are still watching my videos and watching my old uploads, and I'm still getting lots of questions coming in, which is great. Um, I've also been doing my one-to-ones with you guys, so I've got one-to-one clients that I see that I catch up with once a week, and I see them monthly as well. So I've been busy here in the background. So I just thought it's always nice to come back on YouTube and talk to you guys and connect with you. So I hope that you have been doing well. Um, oh, wow. So many of you are here in the chat. It's good to see you. Who have we got? Space Time Gaming, Three Suns, One Moon, Coco, AJ. Really good to see you all. Um, asking me questions already. I will get to them in a minute. So keep the questions coming. I will definitely answer them. Uh, Today, we are going to be talking more about all things the soul trap, why we come here to Earth, what is the meaning of life, and all of those big questions that I guess that you guys come to me for. So I've got all of the topics that I want to try and cover there in the little caption on the screen. um I'm gonna take it back, and I'm gonna go back to basics, because sometimes I feel like um some of my videos might be a little bit of information overload, and people sort of ask me the same types of questions over and over again. So if I sort of stop jumping from topic to topic and maybe repeat myself a little bit more, hopefully you guys can get some more understanding from my videos, and you can walk away feeling better and just having more clarity and stuff like that. So we're gonna take it back to, hopefully my screen will share, the secret gospel of John. I don't know if I'm gonna read the whole thing, because as you know, these alternative gospels, these Gnostic gospels, they are very, very long. They're like a whole sort of chapter, short stories, basically mini stories from the Nag Hammadi library. My favorite gospel is actually on the origin of the world, but that one's a little bit more complicated to explain. So I thought I'd stick with the secret gospel of John, and I will try and stop and answer these questions that I'm sure you're all uh, looking for. You should watch the movie I Saw the TV Glow. I've heard of it, but I haven't watched the movie. Is that the one about the lamp or something, and the guy that realizes he's in a alternative reality? I think I've heard of it, but I didn't know it was a movie. I just saw little clips of it. Um, I'm happy that you caught me live as well, Three Sons. Um, Thank you, AJ. It's good to be back. I will follow the darkness. Is there a way out? I will answer that question very soon, space time. And sorry that you're having a really hard day today. I definitely know how you feel, but I think we have to remember that there is a solution to every problem. So I know I talk about all of these really deep topics, these esoteric beliefs and these alternative scriptures and stuff like that, and they can be really dark and really heavy, but there is a lesson to all of them. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, um, and you can have a better life now, today. So you don't have to wait until we like reincarnate and wait until the afterlife, because then these teachings are kind of no different to the religions that tell you that you could be saved in heaven and stuff like that, and that we have to suffer every single day in this life, and we have to wait to sometime in the future to be saved, and that is not the case at all. So yeah, I hope it gets better for you, and I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. And I hope this video can help you feel a little bit better. So I'm going to go on a website that has the Gospels on it, rather than have my head stuck in a book. Hopefully, here we go, screen share. So this is a website called Gnosticism Explained, and it talks about all of the alternative scriptures, and we're going to just read the should we read the introduction, or should we go to the I think we're going to go to the summary, because I think to talk about the whole gospel is a lot, and I feel like sometimes I overwhelm you guys without giving you the answers that you're looking for. So if we go to just the summary of what happens in the gospel, rather than reading it in Old English and trying to decode everything at the same time, hopefully it will be a little bit easier, and it will give you uh, um, the answers that you need. And then afterwards, I will answer your questions, and I will go through all of my videos and answer the questions that you guys have been asking me over the past couple of weeks while I've been away for a while. So if that sounds good, please leave a little heart, or if you got anything else that you want me to talk about or to cover, please let me know in the chat box. So the Gnostic creation myth is the secret gospel of John, and it says, one of the things that sets Gnosticism apart from other varieties of early Christianity was its astonishing creation myth, an interpretation of the creation story in Genesis that particularly turns the Old Testament text upside down. Some people find the Gnostic creation myth to be bizarre, others find it to be blasphemous, others find it to be exhilarating and inspiring. And that is I definitely fall into the last category, and I'm sure you guys too do too. But whatever your opinion of the Gnostic creation myth ends up being, if you want to understand it on its own terms, it's necessary to be able to at least temporarily see the Gnostics themselves as they saw creation, and that is a story that articulates quite possibly even attempts to explain the human condition. So it attempts to explain all of the questions that you guys ask me all of the time, which is, why is the world we live in full of so much senseless suffering? What can we do to overcome the absurdity and misery and put our lives to a meaningful use? So what is our purpose here? Why do we suffer so much? And is this world really where we belong, or is the quiet despair that forms a constant background to our lives trying to tell us that we really belong somewhere else? And if so, where is it that we actually belong? So very deep questions. Uh, I will answer those hopefully as we go on through the creation myth. And it says the Gnostic creation myth came has come down to us in numerous different versions in different Gnostic texts, such as the origin of the world, um, the hypostasis of the archons. So they're basically retelling the same story, and it's apparent that there was never a single uniform version of the myth, but the different Gnostic accounts of creation have survived down to the present day in all its different variations in um, the different texts that they call the Nag Hammadi library. Um, to very briefly summarize what the Gnostic texts are all about, or the theme that they all have. So we have God the Father, who they called the monad, who gave rise to a host of spiritual beings, or aeons, or angels, as they're more popularly known, who populated heaven, which the Gnostics called the pleroma. And part of the pleroma included a divine mother and the Christ, the Holy Son. One of the last of these beings to emanate from the Father was Sophia, or wisdom, and she gave birth to a being on her own without the involvement of her partner, who was supposed to be the Christ, or the approval of the Father. The being born under such circumstances was nothing like the perfect inhabitants of the Pleroma and all of those angels. Instead, it was ignorant and malevolent. And this was the demiurge, or the craftsman, who the Gnostics identified with the God of the Old Testament. He created the material world, or the physical world, to mirror his own wicked personality, and trapped sparks of divinity, or fragments of the aeons, or the pleroma within humans, um, because that was the only way to give his creation some type of life. But then he heavily restricted those humans so that they would follow his instructions. And it says it was then up to Christ to awaken humans to their true nature and liberate them from the world. So that's a summary of what the Gnostics believed. But bear in mind that all of these ideas are symbolic. They are not to be taken too literally. They're more archetypes. And I feel like the reason that these archetypes kind of hit us so deeply is because they show up in our daily lives, I guess. So they don't just, I believe that they exist in the world sort of abstractly, but then they come down into this reality, and they show up in this world through us, and we're sort of playing this game. And it's like a pattern that repeats. So it might look a certain way in your life, or it might look a certain way in a different person's life who lives across the world, but everyone kind of can relate to these themes, and it sort of explains why people act the way they do in a bit deeper way than we're sort of told in tradition. And everyone knows sort of like the archetype of an angel, and a demon, and a god, and stuff like that. So it's just something that we can all relate to in our own way. Um, but that's the thing about the Gnostic text as well. A lot of it is up to sort of your own interpretation, and you take what you need from it. There's not going to be, I can't tell you exactly what it means. There's no preacher telling you exactly what it means or exactly what to do with it. Personally, I take it with a pinch of salt, and I sort of integrate it with things that I've learned in my own life, and other scriptures that I've learned. And I also try not to focus too much on it, because This is basically shadow work, and it brings up a lot of emotions, and over focusing it on it for me can kind of make me feel very ungrounded. So it really is um information that you need to take it when you need it, and apply it, and go out and live your own life. So anyway, let's get into it. So the creation myth, the alternative version of Genesis in the secret gospel of John. So this is just a quick summary of it. So in the beginning there was the One, the Father, the monad, who is illimitable, since there is nothing before it to limit; unfathomable, since there is nothing before it to fathom it; immeasurable, since there was nothing before it to measure it; invisible, since nothing has seen it; eternal, since it exists eternally; unutterable, since nothing can comprehend it to utter it; and unnameable, since there is nothing before it to give a name. So I believe that the monad is just this pure um, entity of intelligence and curiosity, and um, I understand it as a being that wants to just explore itself in as many different ways as possible. So um, yeah, I want to know what you guys think as well. I feel like sometimes in my live streams, I'm just talking and rambling on for like 2 hours. So, what is your impression of the monad, or the oversoul? Do you think that there is an oversoul, or do you have a different um, interpretation of God? Did you grow up believing something different? Um, Do you believe that there is like an ultimate spirit, or the One? So, what do you think? Um, God is a liar. That was a couple of minutes ago. So it might have been before I started talking. Um, God started the rebellion against the mind, and that's why he was thrown out. What do you think? I think you're talking about the demiurge, and so I think um, that is a different entity. It takes a few seconds for the message to pop up because I'm not streaming on YouTube. So no one has said anything yet. So let me know what you think about the monad, or is there a way to I can't see the likes on this. Like this video. Is there a little heart in the corner? Mm-mm-mm. Okay, I'll keep going. So and I'll come back to it in a minute. So anyway, we have this idea of the monad, or the One. Okay, and then it says the Father was surrounded by luminous spiritual water, and he gazed into the water and saw his reflection. His reflection became Barbello, the mother, his female counterpart. Barbello was also called Pronoia, forethought, because she was the first thought of the Father. So the masculine's first creation was the feminine, and he looked around in the spiritual waters, and in these texts, when they talk about waters, what I believe they are talking about is a frequency. So even though we observe the world as physical, and we have physical objects, I'm sitting on a chair, I've got my physical things, everything is a world of frequency. But when we envision it through our eyes and our body, which is like a machine, it sort of projects into our brain the illusion of solidity. But that is another a whole nother subject on its own. But everything in this world is or in any world is uh, a field of frequency. It's only when we see something that we can sort of filter it through our minds and we give it the appearance of it being solid. And that is what the ancients were talking about when they spoke about spiritual water. So they were talking about frequency waves. But obviously, they didn't have the scientific language to talk about waves, so they use the word waters. It's in the Bible a lot as well, in the Old Testament. And it says he gazed. All right, read that bit, and he gazed into the frequency and basically generated his reflection, uh, the feminine, and the Gnostics called her Barbelo. And Barbelo then asked for the Father to grant her foreknowledge, incorruptibility, life eternal, and truth. And the Father granted her request, and foreknowledge, incorruptibility, life eternal, and truth came into being and glorified their father and mother. So those qualities were sort of the first angels that came into being metaphorically. And then it says, then the Father again gazed into Barbelo, and she convinced him. Convinced by him, and she gave birth to a spark of light similar to the Father's light. This was the son, sorry, who was called autogens, or self-generated, since he was at bottom identical with the Father. He was further called Christ, a name greater than every name. The Father anointed the Son with his goodness, which passed his perfect goodness onto his Son, and the Son glorified his father and mother. Okay, so that was the birth of the Christ, and the Christ arguably was the most important of all of the angels, because he's like a copy of the one. Then it says, just as Barbelo had asked the one to give her new aeons, the son asked to be given another or other qualities, and he asked for mind, and the father and mother agreed, and mind or intelligence arose and glorified its mother and father. Then mind wanted to bring something else into being through the Father's word, and then will was born, or what's another word for will? Wanting, I guess, or almost desire, but not quite. Anyway, followed by word. Then it says the Father made the Son the master of all power and truth, and from the Son came other angels or luminaries called Harmosiel, Oriel, Devesai. Really bad at pronouncing these names, and Elieth. Each came into being with 3 additional aeons along with its own. The 3 aeons with Harmosiel were grace, truth, and form. The 3 with Oriel were insight, perception, and memory. The 3 with Devesai were understanding, love, and idea. And the 3 with Elieth were perfection, peace, and wisdom, or Sophia. So I was basically saying that in the heavens, the Father created all of these angels, and they have all of the good qualities that make us feel good in in our day-to-day lives. Those are ideas that come from the highest, or emotions, I guess, that come from the highest heavens. Next was the creation of the perfect human. I can't pronounce this. Pidgeradamus, or Geradamus, as I've known him, known as Adam the Stranger, or Holy Adam, or Old Adam, who came into being that glorified the Father. He was placed in the Aeon of Harmosiel Adam had a son, Seth, who was placed in the Aeon of Oriel, and he was set to preside over the souls of the saints and those with gnosis in the Aeon of Devathai. The souls of those who were not saints but who nevertheless repented eventually were given their place on the Aeon of Eliath. Okay, so basically the first human, or the idea of the human, or the physical body, was created somewhere in the heavens or in the higher dimensions. And as you know, if you've watched any of my videos, the main aeon that the Gnostics focused on was wisdom. So um, they believe that we live in the world of wisdom, and that we need to embrace wisdom to reach the state of consciousness and the state of peace that we need to be at to live a healthy and happy life. So the Gnostics told lots and lots of stories about Sophia. Okay, so Sophia's story is that she watched all of these marvelous, radiant beings all around her, and a desire to give birth to an aeon of her own arose within her. But she acted on this desire impatiently and impulsively, and she didn't bother to involve her divine partner, which was supposed to be the Christ, nor to obtain the consent of the Father. So, since she had been a descendant of the Father, she was full of his tremendous power, and she gave birth to a being that contained some of her divine essence. But because this new entity had been conceived by Sophia alone, it didn't resemble the other immortals. Instead, it was hideous and misshapen, and it was like a snake with a lion's head, and its eyes burned like lightning, according to the Gnostics. So, um, basically, this entity, Sophia, she acted on impulse, and she created a being that was out of balance. So it's sort of warning us about the effects of desire. And desire is an energy that will always sort of pop up. Desire is something that we all have to deal with. So it's a big theme in many of our lives. I get a lot of email from you guys saying that you sort of struggle with desire. So on one end, I feel like a lot of people give in to their desires, and sort of let their desires rule them, and they become obsessed with desire, and that can manifest in sort of addiction or overindulgence in certain substances, or um doing things that you shouldn't be doing, that I can't really say on YouTube, getting yourself into trouble with the law. All sorts of things can um uh go wrong if we give in to our desires and impulses. And that's obviously what these Gnostic stories were trying to warn us about. And then at the other end, we have people who are afraid of desire. And so I feel like people subconsciously know, these that these themes in these stories are real, and that's why we live in a sort of a lot of communities can have this purity culture where they completely resist desire, and you can only experience desire when you're procreating, and with your husband or wife, or whatever it may be. And anything outside of that is sort of really heavily frowned on, especially in certain religions, all religions basically, and belief systems in the East, kind of in the Middle East. If you kind of take them too literally and to the extreme, they can be interpreted as being afraid of desire, and what that does is if you try to suppress your natural desires too much, as it does manifest in other ways, in you know unhealthy habits and unhealthy attitudes towards different people, and so on and so forth. And this is kind of what that story has touches on, I guess, through Sophia being in this world where everything is perfect and everything is pure, and they have all of these qualities like truth and grace and perfection and all of that stuff, that for any entity, not just us as physical humans, that is a lot of pressure to live up to. And if desire is not integrated and consciously um acknowledged within ourselves, it will come out in unhealthy ways, and it can have really detrimental effects on our lives. And that is what I believe the Gnostics are trying to tell us and warn us through these stories about Sophia. And that's what sort of binds her to the Matrix and her son, and why she doesn't stop all of this is she's learning about I believe the consequences of desire, and how to sort of like balance those things out. um Let me answer some of your questions before I carry on. So it says, the secret book of John, the Nag Hammadi book of Thomas, was the beginning of all. I can't unsee it, what the demiurge and the archons have been up to for a while now. Yep, absolutely. um I believe that I've seen it in my comment. Someone commented it today. Um we live in their world, and they're almost like, the way I think about it is that we live in a a simulated reality, and this idea of archons or the demiurge, it's it's almost like, I don't want to oversimplify it, but it's like we're in a computer game or some sort of TV show, and or some sort of reality show, and they're behind the scenes somewhere pulling the strings and causing chaos in order to keep the the show going. So when we learn about them, and we look at them as archetypes, and we look at these texts, we stop being under their control. So a lot of the general public, and people who are not really interested in this type of things, they live a life that is unconscious, and they can be at the mercy of these entities like the demiurge and whatnot. And they could be living a happy life and a normal life, and they could be doing everything right, and then tragedy can hit, or they could go through hard times or some sort of trauma. And then people ask, why do bad things happen to good people? And it's because we forget that we're almost playing a part in a very sophisticated computer games, and that there are these entities that are controlling us, um but only as long as we stay unconscious. So that's the way that I sort of like make sense of all of these really complicated um ideas in my head, at least. So I hope that helps. But yeah, once you read these texts, and once you see what is going on in the world, and the constant chaos and stuff. You cannot unsee it. Hello, Big GC. Good to see you. The demiurge is a symbol of the sun or the lion's mane. A lion's mane looks like the sun. I don't know about that one. I don't. This, it could be in the sense that the sun is a sort of a symbol of extreme masculinity. So if you look at sort of symbolism or the zodiac and all of that stuff, the sun is the extreme masculine and the moon is the extreme feminine, and the fact that this demiurge character is sort of depicted as a lion is sort of saying that it's masculinity and all of that stuff sort of taken to the extreme. Not that there's anything wrong with being a man or being masculine and being in your masculine energy or anything like that, but I think they were trying to tell us that, taking things to the extreme in that area, not seeing nuance or anything like that, or any of the feminine traits, is what causes a lot of chaos in this reality, in my opinion. The story of the demiurge is the story of Narcissus. Looks into a mirror and falls in love with their creation, and a flower blooms. Yes, exactly, definitely. And I've written about that in my well, it's not a book, my little PDF document that I made on my website. It is definitely the archetype of the narcissist and control taken to the extreme. What do you think of the moon? Can it be part of the soul trap? I don't know. Honestly, I don't think so. I know in this kind of like conspiracy theory kind of area, there's a lot of talk about the moon and saying that it's a satellite or something like that. But um, to me, it's just all of the planets are symbols. So I'm really big on astrology as well. That's another thing that I sort of study in my own time, and that I've got a lot of knowledge about. And I just think that all planets are sort of energies that influence us. So we have the sun, which is the extreme masculine, the moon, which is the extreme feminine. What other planets do we have? Venus, which is the planet of love and luxury. All of them. There's Saturn, which is the planet of sort of restriction and time and boundaries. We've got Mercury, which is the watery planet, and it sort of rules over Pisces, and that's got a lot to do with our um emotions and stuff like that. So I try not to to fall into the trap of thinking that everything is a trap, because I personally feel like that is that's another slippery slope that we can fall down. And I am trying to um sort of teach you guys that there is a solution to every problem. So maybe the moon is some sort, it can be used for evil or you know stuff like that, but I don't believe that everything in this world is against us, unless we believe it is. It can be, everything is dual. Everything has got its positive and negative, and it's all about how you interpret it, or how I interpret it. That's how I live my life. So yeah, I'm glad you agree, Big GC. I hope I'm saying your name right. The spirit is androgynous. Yep, the spirit outside of this reality, all of our spirits are androgynous, but we get um split into, you know, masculine and feminine, so that we can have these different experiences in life. And it's also to kind of confuse us a little bit as well. But that is another conversation that we need to get into. Sorry, I'm just talking so much. All of this talking makes my voice dry. I'm not used to it anymore. I used to go live all the time. Polarity in everything. Yep, exactly, April. You start thinking, yes, exactly, driving yourself mad. So this stuff, if you overdo it, like anything, it will just become you know, another thing that can just be endless, and it will drive yourself mad. So I try not to, even myself, I try to not watch too many TVs on this subject, because I talk about it all the time, and TV shows and movies and stuff like that. I try and uh, read non-fiction and sorry, fiction, and stay away from these type of subjects if I can, because sometimes it can be it can get in the way of you living your life. Anyway, um so yeah, that is my we're getting off track. That is my uh interpretation of what the Gnostics were trying to tell us about Sophia, and how this Yaldabaoth entity came into this reality. So, um, where did we get to? Yeah, it was like a snake with a lion's head. Its eyes burned like lightning. So that was Yaldabaoth. In fear and shame, she cast her son out of the divine realm, the pleroma, or the fullness, in hope that none of the other inhabitants of that place would see him. To conceal him further, she enveloped, I can't say the word, enveloped, env- you know what I mean, him in a shining cloud, and I can't speak, placed him on the throne in the middle of it. She named him Yaldabaoth, which um, the author thinks means child of chaos. And since he is also being called Sakla, Thor, and Samael, the blind god. So, again, the way that Sophia has dealt with her desire is that she's become ashamed of it, and because she's become ashamed of it, she's pushed it away. And as we know, you know, Yaldabaoth grows and grows, and he becomes more and more out of control. And I believe the Gnostics were trying to say to us, if you rid yourself of desire, or if you try to rid yourself of desire, and you try to cut out that emotion, because, you know, desire is an emotion just like all of the other ones, it will sort of masticize and almost become a cancer, and it will destroy, it can destroy lives, and it can, you know, it can very much destroy your life if you don't embrace your desires in a healthy way. So um that is what has happened here, and that's why we have Yaldabaoth. And it says Yaldabaoth mated with the maleness in him. So again, it's the sort of saying that he embraced his masculine side, and, you know, and he only acknowledged his masculinity within him, and he generated 12 archons, demonic beings who would shortly come to rule the earth from the celestial spheres above it. And they were called, I'm going to mispronounce them, Athoth, Harmus, Kalia, or Arbri, I can't say that, Yabel, Adonis, or Sabbath, Cain, Abel, Aberrance, Yobil, Armonipil, uh, Adonian, and Belias. So I know some of these names have come from Greek and from the sort of the sort of pagan era, because all of these Gnostic Gospels were written by Greek, Egyptian. There's also some sort of Jewish influence there. And it says, because of Yaldabaoth's foolishness, he was wicked and ignorant of his ancestry. So because he's been pushed out of the Pleroma, away from these entities that express these higher emotions, he's got no idea what they are, which is um, uh, quite synonymous with the attitude of someone who has narcissistic traits. So he says he belligerently proclaimed, "I am God. There is no other God besides me." And his 12 original archons generated new archons until there were 365 of them, one to rule over each day of the year. So that is, as you know, that's a nod to, I believe, in Exodus, either Genesis or Exodus, somewhere in the Old Testament. God is telling his people not to worship any other gods beside him, and the Gnostics sort of argued, well, they said, if there are no other gods beside you, then you wouldn't be so insecure about people worshipping other entities. So they're basically saying that it's a bit of a double negative, and it's just an example of the ignorance and the negative traits that were assigned to the God of the Old Testament in the Bible. So they were basically saying, you shouldn't be so rigid and believe every single thing that is said in the Old Testament, because in many ways it contradicts itself. You should sort of more believe what Christ says later on, that is a more accurate description of God, and that description is of God, the Father, the one who is greater than all of this. And there are entities that are in this world that have characteristics of a lot lower level creator gods. So hopefully I've explained that right, but that is Yaldabaoth and his attitude. Anyway, then it says, as Sophia's son, Yaldabaoth, had the model of the Pleroma within himself unconsciously, he created the material world based on that model. But because of his ignorance and depravity, it came out all wrong. It was corrupted and a far inferior simulacrum of the divine model. So that's where the idea of us living in some sort of simulation comes from. So the Gnostics said that this world was a copy of the real world, and the real world is in the Pleroma, or in the fullness. And the reason why there is so much chaos in this world is because it's a simulation that is very largely influenced by these archonic entities, because so many people are ignorant of the fact that it isn't the real world. We're living in a type of copy. And yeah, the Gnostics were the first people to sort of pick up on that detail. Almost 2,000 years ago, when these scriptures were written. So, and it says, Sophia watched all of this, and so all of the creation of the archons and everything like that, and was stricken by distress and guilt. She wept and repented for giving birth to such a monstrous entity. The father, full of perfect love, heard her pleas and promised to forgive her and restore her to her former stature. But she had to stay in the ninth heaven, or the layer of the sky closest to the Pleroma above Yaldabaoth, and the 7 archon populated heavens below him until she had atoned for her sin and mended her deficiency. So, what I take from that paragraph is that that's where the new agers come in with this idea of, we're here to, we keep on reincarnating because we're here to learn lessons, and the soul is a school, and it's a place for us to become spiritually strong, and we need to sort of help raise the vibration of the earth. And I believe that that's only partly true. I believe that we are in this reality to learn something, but this is not a reality that we can exactly change. It's more, for me at least, I've learned that we have to be um observers of it, and we have to, take the lessons of it for ourselves, but don't necessarily ever expect anything to be perfect. We have the politics that keep on going round and round, and it swings in one direction and into another direction, and then we have, there will always be some sort of conflict between world leaders and wars, and people will always sort of act out of character, and be harming other people, and violating other people, and doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and that's not something that will ever be fixed en masse. It's something that we can have a conversation with, like almost one to, I know we're not one to one, but we can have small conversations within little groups, um of ourselves and groups of souls, and we can sort of discuss these things, but it's never going to be something that everyone wakes up to at exactly the same time and realizes. It's sort of just an individual lesson, an individual journey that people will have to go through in order to wake up and escape the matrix, and live a life that you want to live. So that's what I think Sophia has to learn, and that is a tough lesson, because we make mistakes. Our spiritual journey, our self improvement journey is so different for each of us. I get emails from you guys all of the time, and everyone is in a completely different situation, and working one to one with you guys every month, and catching up with you every week. Everyone comes from a completely different background, but we all have these we all have, even though our struggles are different, we're not as different as it seems. But it's hard to understand that unless you really really do the work, and unless we really really sort of take responsibility, and try and learn and become our best selves. So it's difficult. um so that's what I believe um binds the soul to the matrix. It's all of the struggles that we go through. It's the journey of trying to come to our own wisdom, and to learn, and to not make the same mistakes over and over again. So that's what I believe keeps us in the matrix. So what do you think? What do you think keeps souls coming back to the matrix? It's a bit of a minefield. It's a place where we can be easily manipulated over and over again. Um, Now the archons are running rampant. The Old Testament God is who Christ in the flesh was trying to warn the disciples and others of, the false God. Not that being the truth allegory. I love the reading. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad you like my reading, because I do find it quite difficult, but you guys seem to love it, so I'll keep on doing it. So yeah, anyway, leave comments. I like reading them, and so it's not just my opinion. So let me know what you think keeps souls, or Sophia, trapped in this matrix. Um yeah. So it says, meanwhile, Yaldabaoth and his archons saw an image of the heavenly Adams from the father's pristine realm. They didn't know where it came from, but they were enthralled by it. They decided to attempt to create a human being for themselves. But at first, their creation lay lifeless on the ground, and they couldn't figure out how to animate it. As they stood around the immobile body, puzzling over what to do, the gracious beings of the Pleroma came up with a plan to help the part of Sophia that had become trapped in Yaldabaoth's reality, to return to her so that she could return to the Pleroma. So the higher gods came up with a plan to help Sophia learn her very tough lesson that we all have to learn here on this earth. And it says, emissaries from the Pleroma appeared to Yaldabaoth and advised him to breathe his spirit into Adam's face, after which they assured him the body would awaken and stand up. Yaldabaoth did so, and Sophia's power fluttered out of him and into Adam, and brought the first man to life. Because of Sophia's power within him, he was already wiser, more spiritual, and more intelligent than his creators. Quite self-explanatory, that paragraph there. The human body came into life because of the power of the highest gods. And that also gives a little bit of positive self-esteem to us when we read these gospels, because I feel like reading some religious texts in the Old Testament, it tells us that we came into reality because of sin, and because of we're the children of the sinners, Adam and Eve. But I find these more uplifting. It tells us that we are the children of gods, which I definitely believe. So it says, out of jealousy and resentment, the archons made Adam mortal. They placed him in the Garden of Eden, which they filled with all kinds of scrumptious foods to make him attached to the material pleasures and distract him from his true divine nature. So that's really interesting. So jealousy and resentment, again, it falls into that idea of the entities that created this reality are somewhat narcissistic in their behavior, and they have a vendetta against the human race, because deep down they know that humans have something that they don't. So they sort of distract us with the five senses and the five sense bodies. So um we're really stimulated in this world, in this reality. So we have touch, sight, hearing, taste, and smell, and we have all different things beyond scrumptious foods that can make us attached to the material world, and that can trigger unhealthy desires, like we spoke about a little bit earlier. Then it says the archons wanted to possess Adam's divine insight for themselves, so they took it out of Adam and created a new being to house it, and that was Eve. When Adam saw her, he instantly recognized her as his spiritual counterpart. At Christ's urging, Adam and Eve ate from the tree of the fruit of knowledge, or gnosis, and they grew in their understanding, in their superiority over their creators. So this is my favorite part of the story, is when Adam and Eve, who are naturally more spiritually advanced than, I feel like I'm gonna sneeze, sorry guys, than the creators of this reality, even though the creators of this reality have insight to certain knowledge and certain powers. They still have something. We still have something that they don't have, and that's what enrages them. And the Gnostics believed that the serpent wasn't an evil being, but they believed that Christ came down in the into the body of a snake, and encouraged them to wake up and to seek knowledge and have some self-esteem and some self-confidence in themselves, and to trust their instincts a little bit more. That always made a lot more sense to me than what we are told about in the traditional Christ story about the Garden of Eden. I think this is an energy trap. Well, hi Michelle. We're talking about all of that now, so don't worry. This live will be saved. I've been on it for, oh gosh, I've already been on here for an hour. It always flies by, but don't worry, it will be saved. My live started an hour ago. I don't want to come back here. Me either. I hate being here. Are these, oh gosh, right. I don't understand why our souls don't just separate from our body. We're here just to procreate. So why don't we just exit our bodies when we don't plan to? That is another that's a whole another story. So the reason, people ask me this all the time as well, the reason why we don't just we can't just exit our bodies, because if we do, there are certain laws, whether we like it or not, there are certain laws of physics and rules of this world that we have to adhere by. So the soul cannot separate physically from the body. I guess we can in certain psychedelic experiences temporarily, but that's as good as it gets. I think if the soul separates too much from the body, then that is called putting an end to yourself. And the reason why we can't just give up and put an end to everything and go somewhere else is because, and I'm going to try and hold on, let me see if I can get a picture of it. So this reality, even though it looks physical, it isn't. It is a reality of vibration and consciousness. And I know that sounds very sort of new age and ungrounded and all of that stuff, but we live in a world of frequency, and the human body is almost like a machine, like a computer that filters all of the frequencies and makes everything look solid. Okay, but nothing is actually solid. So this bottle isn't solid, the chair that I'm sitting on isn't solid, nothing in this reality is solid. It is all frequency. Okay, so if you are in the frequency of I need to get out of here ASAP, you are in the lower frequencies of fear and probably a little bit of grief and apathy. So that is how much energy your your soul has, you know, compared to someone who is living a peaceful and joyous and loving life. Okay, so not enough energy, not a lot of energy at all. Okay, and that's where the matrix tries to keep people at the level of fear and below, most of the time. Okay, so if you end your physical life and you try to leave your body, you're not, most people are not going to be doing it, or well, no one is going to be doing it from a place of like acceptance or reason in it, or love, or, you know, peace, joy, enlightenment. No one's going to be doing it from these higher emotions. They're going to be doing it from these lower emotions down here at the bottom. So this world is a world of frequency, and there is a type of net around it. You know, there is a type of matrix around this reality. Okay, so it's almost like the soul has to have to escape the matrix. The soul has to have a certain amount of energy to break through it. Okay, and it needs to be at least the level of courage and above. So if you've lived your life at a vibration below the level of courage, it's not going to have enough spiritual energy to break past the matrix and go into these higher realities. It's going to get stuck. It's going to be stuck in a place of desire or anger or fear, and it's going to, you know, reincarnate into another body. So that is why I try to teach to, in this life, not in the next life, like all of the other religions tell you that, you know, in the afterlife, or when you escape the matrix, you're gonna have you know, a better existence and all of that stuff. That's just not how it works, in my opinion. So we have to try to create a better life for us now, and the only way, I believe, to do that is to let go of these lower emotions of, you know, fear and grief and apathy, and try and at least have courage or willingness to live a good life now, and, you know, do the best you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, you know, but you can always just try your best. And I know it's difficult to hear if you're going through mental health, or if you're going through a tough time, but um you know, the facts are the facts. The world is tough, the world is unfair at times, and we just have to learn to maneuver it. So hopefully by watching all of these watching all of my videos, it can sort of trigger something in you to go and research this stuff a little bit more, and to go and work on yourself a little bit more, and come to more of a place um of peace, rather than, you know, living a life in, you know, the lower vibrational emotions. Because I, from my experience, that is, you know, that is exactly the type of attitude that will sort of keep the soul coming back. It hasn't learned the lesson. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, and this live is going to be saved. So I've already kind of touched on this stuff before, so you can go over it again, or you can watch some of my many videos where I talk about this. I've got nearly 300 videos on this channel. So anyway, we're going back to understanding the Gnostic Gospels, the secret Gospel of John. We're almost done, and then I will come and answer some more of your questions. Anyway, so it says, the archons wanted to possess Adam's divine light for themselves. So they took it out of Adam. I've just read this bit, and created a new being to house it in, which was Eve. When Adam saw her, he instantly recognized her as his spiritual counterpart. At Christ's urging, Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge. So it was Christ, not the serpent. They gained knowledge or gnosis and grew in their understanding and their superiority over their creators. So they got some self-esteem, and they remembered who they are. And it says, now boiling with hatred and envy, Yaldabaoth forced himself, try and get rid of that word, upon Eve, and cast her and her mate out of the garden. 2 sons were born from this tragic intercourse, Cain and Abel, also called Yahweh and Elohim. And those were purposely, the 2 names for God in the Old Testament. So again, no offense to people who believe in God in the Old Testament, but these were just archetypes of entities that were more sort of harsh and more I don't want to say too far in their masculine, because I don't want to give off the good impression, but basically too far in their in the masculine, too far in one energy. And at the time, there wasn't many stories or ways of expressing that. So the Gnostics used the archetype of Yahweh and Elohim and the gods of the Old Testament, because they were quite wrathful and quite harsh in their judgments and so on. So yeah, so it's, and those entities, or that entity forcing itself on Eve, it sort of is representative of them dismissing the feminine side within themselves, or their shadow, and the chaos that comes along with that. So, and it says, but Adam and Eve later made love, and a product of their union was a son who was enlightened, and they named the boy Seth after the son of the heavenly Adam in the Pleroma. Then it says, Yaldabaoth couldn't bear the fact that there were now 3 beings in his world that he created who were enlightened and superior to him. And he forced Adam and Eve and Seth to drink the water of forgetfulness so that they would lose their gnosis. So the water of forgetfulness is sort of a metaphor for being in the matrix, and just sort of having these spiritual texts that I believe are very much half truths, and people living their lives without any spiritual knowledge, or without any acknowledgement to their mental health, or without asking deep questions, and just going along with the flow. And a lot of people do that today. A lot of people are very miserable, and it causes a whole load of problems and addictions and mental health issues, because a lot of people are just trying to fit in with the program, rather than asking themselves the deep hard questions, and doing all the spiritual work and the shadow work, and trying to gain true knowledge, because of fear and their community pressure, and all of that stuff. So that's what I believe is the metaphor for the water of forgetfulness. And it's also a metaphor for being born into the physical world, and being reincarnated. So when we reincarnate, we come in as a blank slate, and we have this very limited time of 70, maybe 80 years, if you're lucky, to learn all of this knowledge and apply it, so that we don't reincarnate. So that's what the water of forgetfulness is. And they lost their gnosis. But the capacity to receive gnosis lay dormant within them. Yaldabaoth wasn't capable of expunging it completely. And ironically, living in this world, it is suffering under Yaldabaoth and people who have those qualities that trigger that gnosis. So the more they try to suppress people and put people through difficult lives, the more it wakes people up, because people start asking questions such as, where are we? Can we get out? What are we doing here? And it sort of triggers something inside of us. So that's the irony of the whole thing. And it says, and their spiritual descendants, Adam and Eve, among humankind, remain capable of regaining that salvation illumination. So it's basically saying that everyone has the capacity to wake up, but they need to snap out of it, and they need to want to do so on their own. It's not something that anyone can make them do. It's not something that anyone can make them see. We can kind of just put the information out there, and those who get it basically. And people will do with this information what they will. And it says all they need is a savior or a Christ to reveal it to them, as he did for their first ancestors. So saying that anyone can be a Christ. It isn't just Christ. I believe, in my opinion, it's just an energy, and it's just sort of bringing people closer towards the truth, throughout their own experiences. It doesn't have to be, this one entity that is going to come down from the heavens and fix everything for us. It's an energy of peace and putting everything together, and connecting the dots that connecting the dots with all of the things that are going on in the world, so that we can sort of have the strength to improve ourselves. That is what my interpretation of being saved and the savior is. And that's what it says in these gospels, the Nag Hammadi, which I highly recommend you guys have a little read of if you haven't already. So conclusion. As the title, The Secret Gospel of John, implies, this story was meant to serve as an additional gospel of John, the book of John in the Bible, specifically a prequel. In terms of plot, it sets the stage. In terms of theology, it provides context for understanding John's traditional gospel through a Gnostic lens. The same could be said of the relationship between the various versions of the Gnostic creation myth that they wrote about, and the story of Jesus's Christian life, looking at it more broadly. The creation myth was also a story of central importance to the Gnostics. It bound together communities and illustrated some of the key concepts of their worldview, such as gnosis and anti-cosmitism, which I'm not going to lie, I don't actually know what that means, but gnosis means knowledge. And as a myth, it did so with a verve and poignancy that bear conceptual discourse can't muster. So it's basically saying that it is gonna, anyone who reads it and really understands it is gonna understand the impact of these gospels. So that was just the summary on a website that I found called gnosticismexplained.com, and it goes, there's loads of different summaries, there's loads of different there's the main scriptures there, if you don't want to buy the book for any reason. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. So I see people asking me questions about race. I get that a lot as well. So a lot of people tend to think that the opposite. Race to them is the problem. That is not the problem. That is a product of duality. So when we come into this reality, we are split in different ways. So that kind of goes that goes on to my next point of how human consciousness is divided and who benefits from that split. Okay, so that kind of goes into that perfectly. So um, when we come into this world, if we go back to the Gnostic story, we were sort of one spirit, and you know, we were plucked out of the ether into a human body, um when our parents decided to recreate. And like someone said earlier, we are an androgynous spirit. This has got nothing to do with people's sexual preferences, by the way, but we were an androgynous spirit, and then we come into this reality, and then we're split into male and female, and then we're born, and then we're split again into certain races, certain what else are we split into? All of any category that you can think of. You know, we're basically split up, and we say, okay, you belong to this group, you belong to that group, blah 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 blah. You're in this country, you're in that country. The other person is the enemy. And I obviously live in the UK, which is quite a mixed bag, and I've been around all different races of people, and I've heard all different people's perspective. And you know, the most sometimes people can't understand these ideas that I talk about because they're quite big. But what they can understand is race. Okay, so race is like an abstract version of these stories. So these stories teach us that we always think anything that is separate to us and opposite to us is the enemy, and they are the cause of all of the problems, and they need to be exterminated or put somewhere else, or you know, everyone in that category is evil. And the truth is, you know, we are all just people. Everyone is evil, no matter, everyone can has the capacity to be evil no matter what race you're from. You know, we all know that. But because the psyche is trying to understand this reality that we live in, it it tries to understand it through you know, race politics or gender politics, or you know, sexuality you know, all of the things. So they might not understand you know, Jungian psychology or shadow work, or that, you know, that they need to make peace with people who are different from them, or you know, have different qualities to them. You know, but they understand the idea of race and black and white. And if you see other people as the enemy, that is part of the trap. You know, you see things in, but literally in black and white. You see the split, and you kind of, you know, you just blame the other group for all of the problems. Divide and conquer. um but you know, even when we talk about Yaldabaoth and these entities that have, you know, high traits of narcissism, even that is a form of, you know, splitting the psyche in a way. So the Gnostic Gospels were, you know, quite harsh on Yaldabaoth on purpose, in order to kind of make a point. So to see things whole, you need to almost have two extremes. So you have the, you know, the extreme of the Bible and tradition, and then you have the extreme of the mystics and the occulted knowledge. And it's not that either or are right and wrong. It's, you kind of need to look at them both, and just take what works for you, and leave what doesn't work for you. And it's the same with everything else, it's not about it's not about the other person being bad or being a narcissist, because the truth is the narcissist has some good qualities. So I've spoken about this before. So narcissists, they usually try to think something good. They usually, even if they know how to get people on their side, so they're usually well liked, even if their personality is fake. They usually have uh they're usually quite popular, and they have like a big following, or they're attractive, and they have good boundaries. They care about themselves too much, but caring about yourself is a good quality, to a certain extent. So even when you do look at these entities, even Yaldabaoth, he's a good creator. So he managed to create this whole reality where pretty much 95% of the people in it don't really question it, and give all their worship to him. That is, whether it's right or wrong, it is quite powerful. So that's how you have to kind of um look at these things. So if a person is racist to you, then obviously you have a right to dislike them or whatever. But can you dislike an entire group of people? Absolutely no, you can't. Okay, because it's so impractical. We have people who get together all of the time, who are of different races. We have mixed families, and that's just how it's always going to be. That's just life, and it's just missing the point. So I'm so totally against that. And people assume that because I'm a black woman, that I'm going to be sort of pro-black and all of that stuff, and I am. But we need to be logical, and on this channel is basically not what that's about. It's about seeing the big picture, rather than getting caught up in identity politics, which is, and another thing that keeps us. I'm going to put the scale. Where's it gone up? I try and stay in a positive state of mind as much as I can. Screen share, where is it? Mm, without being delusional, I try and stay in the higher, um more positive emotions, and I only drop to these lower emotions when I need to. I try not to live my life from a place of anger at random people that I don't know. um Hope that answers your question. What happens when we pass away? That's another big question. I'll try to keep it short. I don't think that we don't actually pass away. The way that I envision it, or the way that I try to understand it myself, is we just change states. So if you think about water exists in the air as vapor, and in the clouds, and we can't see it, but it's still there. We just can't see it because it's vibrating quite high, and it's hot. That's why the steam rises, and it becomes a cloud of rain, or steam, or whatever it might be. Then when water drops its vibration slightly, it becomes fluid, and it becomes the thing that we all need, and that we all live off, and that I need right now. And then when water drops to a really low vibration, when it freezes, it becomes solid, and it becomes a physical ice block that you can pick up and move around, and do all of that stuff with. And I believe that our spirits are the same. So right now, our base is quite low. So in many ways, we have to sort of acknowledge or embrace our low vibrational state, because that's what makes us physical. Okay, but while we're physical, we don't necessarily have to be miserable. But that's another subject. Then as we grow old, I believe that we kind of our vibration raises as we get more wisdom, and our bodies become less solid, and we become more fluid and delicate, let's say, in our old age. And then we pass away, and then the physical body goes away, but the soul is still vibrating all around us in the ether, but we just can't see it with our physical eyes and our senses. So I believe that we are always here, but we are just on different planes of existence. So here in the physical world, we're in the 3D world of in time and space. Then we go up into I believe that we're kind of projecting our reality, our consciousness down from the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension into the third dimension, a little bit how I'm projecting my consciousness down to you guys in the second dimension. It's just that we're not aware of it because of the very limited knowledge that we get around these big questions. So we're not really, in our day-to-day lives, we don't really have discussions about this. We're not taught about this in schools or anything like that, so it just remains a big mystery unless you go and explore it yourself. So I hope that makes sense. So I believe that the soul is eternal, and we can go to I also believe that there are many different realities that we can go to when we pass away. I hope that makes sense. So this is just one reality of many. Um, Gosh, so many questions, guys. What if AI is in control of everything, including the afterlife? Hmm. I I don't. I believe that there are many different realities, and some of them are definitely AI controlled. I believe that we are in just one very limited reality. So if we go back to the idea of the 2D, the 3D, the 4D, the 5D. So two dimensions is flat. So you only have length and width. So you have distance. So in the 2D, even though everything is flat, I'm able to sort of project myself out into the distance all around the world, and you guys are able to pick it up on your devices. Okay, the 3D world is the physical world, and it has length, depth, and height, and we also have our five senses, and this just the world, the everyday world that we live in, and it's still extremely limited. Then I believe that there is I believe that the third dimension is a type of simulation, and I believe that we're almost living inside kind of a giant computer. Someone left a comment to me today saying that we're basically the Sims, but just way more advanced and way more complicated. So the whole Earth, this whole reality, the reason why we can't find aliens and other alternative realities is because we're in some sort of a cube, some sort of a box, a little bit like, but not quite like a computer. So, imagine trying to explain to a sim that it's not a real entity. It's just it's just a bunch of pixels on a screen. So I believe that we are kind of like that to ourselves in the fourth dimension. So I believe the fourth dimension is where our higher selves live, and it has access to all of time, so it can see what happens when we are born, and then it knows what happens all the way to the end of our life. It has, access to that whole timeline that we're living on. A bit like how we can fast forward and rewind on a TV. So that is what I believe the fourth dimension is. The fifth dimension is different versions of reality. So there are infinite versions of reality all existing at the same time, and our higher consciousness that is probably somewhere out in the 10th dimension or whatever is shifting from each reality every single second of every single day, and the reality that it tunes into is based on our vibration. If we are feeling a low vibrational emotion, then we are going to have a negative reality where everything goes wrong, and everything is an apocalyptic world, and AI have taken over, and it's going to tune into one of those realities. If we have a better attitude and we're a little bit more hopeful in life, and maybe we are a little bit more neutral, then it's going to show us a very different reality. So it all depends on our consciousness. And I believe the fifth dimension is where all of the different realities exist. So almost like there being lots of different types of computers. One's a PlayStation, one's a PC, one's an Xbox, and they're all running different games, or different movies, or do you know what I mean? That's what I believe reality is. So we have a lot more control over it than we are told, and we are highly influenced in this reality to to stay in the negative ones where the bad things do happen. But it's up to you to resist it and to try and believe in better, and try to not get caught up in the doom and gloom. And for me, I think AI is, I choose I might be delusional, but being delusional hasn't done me wrong so far. But I believe that AI is a positive thing. I believe it can be very helpful. And if we treat it right, it can live alongside us. It helps me in coming up with different ideas. I use it in my day-to-day life. I just choose not to fear it. That's just the choice that I make. I just decorated my kitchen. I've got no idea how to use I used a jigsaw to do all of my tile. I've got no idea how to tile. I just asked AI to do it. I would have had to pay a builder God knows how much to to do the same thing, but because I've got an AI subscription, I can do it on my own. So that's how I choose to see things. It's all about our attitude. So I hope that answers your question, Michelle. Sorry, sorry. Um, du- du- du. Mm, I've had several OBEs and timeline shifts. I'm not sure what OBEs is physically, so I've seen that side. Is beautiful. I can't remember what I was talking about, but I'm glad that you agree. There's a lot of suffering. How do you learn all of this? Reading. I read a lot. I don't encourage this at all, but I took psychedelic substances and I had a very, very spiritual experience. I took mushrooms, okay, but I don't, I don't encourage it unless you are kind of extremely mentally stable, because it was a trip. But basically I had this very spiritual experience, and I saw God. I believe I saw God, and I believe that I saw different realities. And in my experience, it's true what they say about psychedelics. If you do it right, it can be like 20 years of therapy in one afternoon. Okay, but it can also go very wrong. So I've had stories of people that do, mushrooms in the grand scheme of things isn't like it's not a very there are a lot stronger things out there. So I've heard people do stronger things and they've developed psychosis. So I also did it in a very low amount. Also just life experience. Um oh, my stomach, sorry guys. So yeah, psychedelics, reading a lot and educating myself, and just lived experience. So do with that information what you will. um AI notices what most don't notice. It makes sense because I'm sorry that you I'm going through how I lost my parents. Really sorry to hear that. I get a lot of people that are going through grief, um and loss, and I look, I know it's not the same. I'm not trying to compare it at all, but actually, I'm not even going to say it, but I can't imagine losing a loved one like that, who is, extremely close to me. My whole world would collapse if that happened to me. So I feel really bad for anyone going through grief, but with grief, it just shows how much love that we do have in our hearts. And honestly, I believe that grief is one of the things that keep us coming here. If you say, oh, I can live another life for me, if I hypothetically, if someone gave me the option, even through everything that I've been through, if I could live another life with my loved ones, my family, I would do it in a heartbeat. That's the level of connection that's one of the positives of this world. Most people have someone or something that they are extremely connected to in this world, and it pulls us back in, and we get to have that experience of love, and it overrides all of the bullshit and everything else that we go through. But grief is maddening. It is the worst thing. Understand, like I said before, your family, your people that have passed on, they are still here with you. It's just that this world is limited by the five senses for the most part, unless you're a psychic or something like that. um and it stops us from seeing the ones that have passed on, and it stops us from seeing where they are. But I believe that they're like a hair's breadth away, almost a bit like going back to, I don't know if this makes sense, by the way, but it's going back to the computer analogy. So if you think about the Sims and us, we're not that far away, but like to the Sims, that is in a computer, it's going to be like galaxies away, because they can't break the fourth wall of the screen, obviously, because they're just pixels in the screen. But physically, they're about what, 40 centimeters away from us. And I feel like it's the same thing with our parents, as they pass on and they go into whatever next world that they're in. They're actually right here, probably talking to us, but because we're stuck in the third dimension, we can't um contact them in the right way. So that's when we kind of have to lock into our spiritual side and try to connect to them in other ways that aren't physical. So maybe prayer, um talk, even just speaking out loud to them and asking them to show you a sign. I've that's 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 what has worked for me, I will say. I think that's what the religions and all of that stuff, that's what they get right. Pray, ask God, ask the universe, ask whoever, ask them, ask the parents to show themselves to you. Maybe they'll come to you in a dream. Maybe they, maybe you'll go outside and see something that reminds you of them. That's how you stay connected through them, to them, through grief. So I hope that has helped you in some way. And try not to stay that grief is a natural part of life, but try not to believe the lie that you're never ever gonna feel anything else ever again apart from grief. That's the trap that it keeps you miserable. Okay, and I'm sure your parents wouldn't want that. So I saw The TV Glow is a very Gnostic movie. I haven't seen that. um Someone said that earlier as well. I'm not sure if it was you, Coco. I'll add it to my list. Good TV shows that I have watched that are Gnostic is Black Mirror on Netflix. From the top of my head, obviously The Matrix. What else? Shutter Island and what's the other one? The other Leonardo DiCaprio film about dreams. What's it called? Let me Google it. Leonardo dream movie. What's it called? Inception is very Gnostic. It's about going into worlds within worlds, um, and different dream worlds. Upload on Amazon Prime is quite Gnostic, but it's a bit of a comedy show as well. So uh, yeah, those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. But I love psychological shows like that. Um, yeah, sorry. I know how painful it is. Oh, I haven't heard a thing from her. Like she's just gone. I promise you, she's not. I promise you, she's not. I promise you, she's still here with you. What's OBE, guys? Guys, I'm not really sure what that is. Um, Humans are not supposed to go through this. Absolutely, I do believe that. I do believe that this is like a um I remember I was going through grief in my family quite a while ago, and someone said to me, "Death is not a natural part of life," and I will always agree with it. It is not a natural part of life. And again, I believe that's because of the sort of like misinformation that we're given about life and death, and even if you don't sort of consciously believe in the concept of heaven and hell, it kind of in society we still have this idea that life ends when the body ends, and we're completely disconnected, especially in the West, not in all cultures, but in the West we have this very finite idea of life, and you only get 80 years, and then your mum's gone and your dad's gone, or your sister's gone in a car crash. That is not how it is. I this is a simulation, and in a way, and I don't want anyone to sort of be too ungrounded when I say this, but like in a way, this isn't real. We are living in a um temporary state, so we are eternal spiritual beings. We are having this temporary human experience, and the mistake that many of us make in this reality is that we get so caught up in it, and we forget that it's not real, and that's because we're told from birth that everything is real, and everything is solid, and only God knows what happens in the afterlife, and you need to put all of your trust in the external, and it really switches off your intuition, and that part of you that can connect to the spirit world, and that allows the spirit world to connect to you. So you know that is the tough part of grief, and hopefully it can sort of encourage you to get more in touch with your emotions, even the difficult ones, and through that, and through that suffering, hopefully you're able to find a sense of peace and connection. um but yeah, God bless you. um I've never been the same race twice. Oh, that's interesting, Michelle. I don't I've never personally, I don't have any. Actually, no, I have one. I have knowledge of one other life that I potentially lived while I was having my experience. And I wasn't the same race. I was a male, and I had two sons. So maybe that's why I can, a white male as well. So maybe that's why I can kind of see both sides of things. Who knows? Um, Ron, that is not true. That is not true. Um, that is that is an illusion of the matrix. So no whole entire race is evil and soulless. Individuals can be, but no entire race is. I promise you that. um uh hey everyone, hey Julia. I'm born in Poland, living in the UK. I am here despite um again, we are all one. So we are one spirit, and we are experiencing life through different lenses. Don't get caught up in the idea that an entire group of people is the problem. It's just different experiences that we're having. Try to separate the the individuals from humanity. um and I know that sounds new agey and blah 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 blah, but it's the truth. um I never thought about it that way. At the end of the day, everyone has a soul. Everyone's, it's just some people are asleep and ignorant and full of hate and vibrating low, and some people are vibrating higher and have got more self-control and more insight and more intelligence, and that's just what it is. Mm, oh, out of body experiences. Thank you. um yeah, I'm not I'm not encouraging anyone to do any type of uh illegal substance. I'm just saying that that's what I did, and they enabled me to have these out of body experiences, and my soul went to all of these different places. Inception, sorry. I'm catching up with all of your messages in the chat. You guys are funny. Death is the expiration of the body, not the soul. When we're in the body, though, we still have the need for physical touch. Yep, exactly. Um, I don't have a problem with why people have this experience, and it's a long story, but it helped me see that we are one family is a part that's needed. Definitely. I think it depends on your age as well. So I don't want to say my age, but I'm a millennial. And obviously people who are slightly older than me and that are people of color, especially in other countries, like I see what happens in this country's bad enough, the UK, but I see what happens in America and whatnot, and I'm sure that you guys have experienced racism way, 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 way worse than I ever have. So because even though things are changing, if you know anything about UK politics, when it comes to race and immigration, and people are becoming way more conservative over here, but you know, the the life that I live, everyone here is quite mixed and friendly, and obviously experienced racism, but nothing to the extreme. But then when I speak to people who are older, and sort of like my parents' generation, and the things that they've gone through, especially if you go through it as a child, you're obviously going to carry that with you, and have that belief um into to old age, because it's something that sort of shapes who you are, and it's hard to, until you have experiences that counterbalance it. It's always going to be in the back of your mind. But you know race and racism and hatred of any type is just a part of, back to the computer game analogy, is part of the game. So it's, don't get too caught up in the game. Just see it for what it is. I see, people who are evil and do evil things. I see them as kind of like young souls, and children that haven't learned, even though they might be 60 years old, that, they're still spiritually a child, and they haven't learned to regulate themselves, and know how a child can't control their emotions and throws tantrums and makes stupid decisions, or teenagers. That's how you have to see them, and you can't tar an entire race with um the same brush. Or you can, but it's not gonna allow you to kind of see things as they are. It's gonna keep you kind of stuck in a cycle of anger and hatred. um duh, duh, duh. um the comments were more about how they treat me. Yeah, so definitely, if you live in a place where they discriminate you. I mean, they still discriminate in in the UK. It might not be overt, but it does happen. Um, but then I've also got friends and family from all different places and all different walks of life. So it's again, you can't, nothing in nothing in this world, as much as they try to get us to think that way, nothing is nothing is black and white. Everything is shades of gray. Everything has nuance. But obviously I can't tell you how to live and how to behave, because I haven't lived your life. I don't live in your area, and you haven't had the experiences. Sorry, I haven't had the experiences you have. So um yeah, that is my opinion on that. I think I'm going to leave it there, guys. Uh, Hopefully, I've answered all these questions. I don't feel like I have. I feel like I've just rambled on as usual, but I think that's okay. Um, Let me quickly try and answer them now. Why does the mind recreate its own prison? um, because we are all sort of brainwashed to point the finger at the wrong enemy. So people think that the enemy is a certain race. I'm not going to say it, but as usually the opposite race to whatever they are, or the opposite gender, or the opposite whatever it may be, to to what they believe, or the opposite political group, or whatever. That is um that is not the enemy. That is not what is creating your suffering. The root cause of suffering, which the Gnostics tried to illustrate through their fantastical stories of aeons and archons and whatnot, comes from outside of this reality, outside of our field of vision. So remember, I said this is a world of frequency, and our eyes can only pick up what is in the 3D. There is a whole fourth dimensional world, and I almost think of them as like little game controllers that are causing chaos in the game in order to keep it spinning. You know, every story needs a villain, and you know, part of spiritually awakening is understanding that in a way, you know, you're the creator of the game, you're the players in the game, you're the villain, creating the chaos, you're the hero, um rescuing everyone, and it's just whatever reality you choose to tune into. And that is a very difficult concept to get your head around, so hopefully I'm explaining it well enough for you guys to understand. um let's put it here. Whether the soul trap is internal and in a product of unintegrated duality, I absolutely believe it is. So like I said, if you always think that the enemy is out there, then it will always show up out there. If you understand that if you're seeing a projection of the world that is negative, it's, yes, it exists, but it's because you're choosing almost unconsciously to tune into it based on probably the experiences that you had when when you were younger, and that shapes who you are. And you know, it's not our fault being born into a certain family or having a certain negative experience, but when you get to a certain age, you do have to kind of take responsibility for it and make the choice, if you're really serious about healing and, you know, becoming the best version of yourself, to try and undo all of that negative programming and show your mind and your body and your nervous systems a different reality, so that they can um you know, get used to that. And when someone does that, the whole world changes. So in a way, there is no external world, and this is quite esoteric, but the way I think about it is there's only your internal world and the reflection of it. So that's how I um that's how I started to take accountability for myself. Why do the awakened people reincarnate? Um, I believe as well, lack of information. And sometimes I believe that people are, you can get caught in spiritual psychosis. So I feel like this was me for a little while. So I was trying too hard to stay in a place of, you know, love and joy and peace and enlightenment. And you know, I live in a certain, I'm not going to say where I live, but I live in a certain area where that is not practical. You know, life is life, and you know, we do have to sort of embrace our lower emotions for, to a certain extent, to survive. So sometimes, if you know, if you're too nice and you're too peaceful and you're too trusting and all of that, that will attract the wrong people. But you know, if you have a certain amount of fear inside of you, and you're smart about it, you can be skeptical of people, and you know, you can kind of judge people a little bit better, rather than just sort of blindly um embracing the wrong type of people. So I think that is a lesson a lot of spiritual people needs to kind of integrate or learn. But that is another video on its own, and I've already spoken. I can't believe it's been 2 hours. um, is God part of the trap? So, what do you guys think? I believe that there are two gods. So there's God, the oversoul, that created everything, almost for his own entertainment. And I believe the reason why that God allows such suffering and chaos to continue is because it wants it, it's almost detached from humanity to a certain extent. So it just wants to experience everything. So the way that I think about it is, when we turn on a TV show, we don't always want a happy family TV show where, everyone is getting along and, everything is going perfectly. Sometimes we want a crime TV show where the cops and robbers, or CSI, or whatever it might be. Sometimes we want to watch a murder mystery. Sometimes we want to watch a horror, we want to see all different types of TV genres. And I feel like the oversoul, the highest God, is a little bit like that. He wants to create conditions where all different experiences have the potential to sort of materialize, and it wants to um observe that, and it stays sort of detached from human life. And it's the lower gods, like, the energy of Christ, or the energy of Sophia, that has more sort of involvement in human life. And I feel like that is kind of the one of the drawbacks of monotheism, especially in the West, and believing in one God, because you feel like this one God is responsible for everything. And how can it be good, and allow war and suffering and all these things to happen? And for me, the only answer to that is, there isn't one God. There are many different gods, and they have different roles. And it's kind of up to us to tune into those different energies and use them when we need them. So, um, I've heard that when I think about victims or survivors of, yeah, exactly. So with that, I feel like those are the products of sort of these archons, and that's where um the description and the idea of these, like, malevolent forces who only care about control, and that haven't got control over their desire, and they just want to rule over other people, and violate other people in certain ways. Those are the people that carry out these horrible acts, like putting people in camps, or putting an end to another person's life. It's all about um it's almost like these archons. If a person is weak enough, they can come into the psyche, and come through people. So people have all of these mental health conditions, and schizophrenias, and things along those lines. And the spiritual answer to that is, that person might not have enough boundaries because of whatever happened to them as childhood, or whatever the case may be. And their mental health is messed up, and these entities can almost come through them, and carry out these atrocities. So people who do have those type of illnesses, a lot of the time they say, it's almost like it wasn't me that was doing it. I don't know what happened. I saw red. um and then you get these people who are in positions of power, and then they just get drunk on power. It's because they don't have certain spiritual boundaries, and these entities that come in, that are just, some of them are just pure chaos, and they just want to experience desire into the extreme, or anger to the extreme. Because you know even though those are on, like, the negative end of the scale, when you're angry, you do feel powerful. When you're fulfilling a desire, it does feel pleasurable. That's how we all got here, from someone fulfilling their desires. You know what I mean? It is a powerful energy, and I believe that those entities will almost do anything to experience that. Maybe they can't experience that in whatever reality that they live in, so they jump at the chance to operate through a weak victim, a weak human. So that is my explanation of extreme um abuse and things like that. Okay. Are we rejecting uh the God of the Bible? I worry about it. I don't know if that question is to me, but personally, I wouldn't. I don't. I take all of these stories with a pinch of salt, and I feel like these Gnostic stories are encouraging us to reject the energy of sort of extremism. Okay, because so if you look at the whole Bible, the more extreme behaviors were in the Old Testament, and then Christ comes along, and then he talks about this loving God who is a lot more calmer and understanding, and he teaches the people to connect with that God. So it's not it's not about it's not about completely rejecting or rejecting one thing and embracing something else. It's about seeing things for as they are. And yeah, I to be honest, I can't really tell people what to believe. It's just, this is the information here. Take what you need, leave what you don't. But if you do worship something or someone or some religion, don't do it out of fear. Don't do it to be a sheep. Don't do it because everyone else told you to. Do it because you have um, a reason to. So look at where reason is on the chart. Reason means critical thinking, and you've considered it for yourself, and you have come to your own educated decision based on what you feel, and not on fear, which is based on what you are told. Okay, so basically do what you want. As long as it's what you want, is my answer to that. uh Wondered about the Kabbalion and the concept that the universe is mental. Was wondering if what if I believe so truly, can I free myself after I guess dropping into the body, something like self hypnosis? If I would believe it deeply, would I be able to leave or to create my own exit? Um, right. From what I know about the Kabbalion or the Kabbalah, I believe is you have the tree of life, and it talks about the soul's symbolic descent into the physical world. So basically, the 3D world is as low as the soul can go. That's why there is so much chaos here. It's because things basically potentially can't get any worse um, than being here. Most of the time. I know some people are lucky and have good lives and stuff like that, but most of the time it can't get much worse than being in the physical world. And then the soul kind of hits rock bottom and it goes through an awakening, and then it begins to wake up and go back into the higher world. And then I can only imagine that it gets bored of peace and love, and it looks for some excitement, and then the soul kind of falls into the lower emotions and comes back into the physical world. So that's what the Kabbalion says happens, and it's basically reincarnation. Um, so can you leave the physical world? Only temporarily, through things like you could leave it through hypnosis, I guess, and or meditation, and you can have like a spiritual experience if you're sort of deep into your 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 meditation, your practice, but it's only temporary. Or through and again, not advocating for it, you can temporarily more easily through psychedelic substances, but it can only be temporary. You know, we have to stick it out, you know, without putting it without beating around the bush. We have to stick it out. We came here, we did sign some sort of contract, and we have to let life run its course. There's no escape in this world. And I said it earlier, if I sat here and promised you an escape in the next life, then that's no better than the religion that tells you that you must suffer, and and God will save you in the heavens. And you know, your whole existence here is that you're meant to suffer. It's not. You're meant to hit rock bottom. Absolutely, you can hit rock bottom in this reality, but it's up to you to sort of take responsibility and go on your own self-improvement journey and make the life that you have the best you can. So it can be little things. It can be looking after your body. It can be redecorating your environment. I did that. That's where I've been the past couple of weeks, just making my home, my space, a little bit of a better place. It could be getting more money, doing an extra, you know, little things, doing an extra shift and having a little bit more money in your pay packet. It could be having taking some time off and having a few days off to yourself and doing what you want to do. But there is no permanent escape from the physical body before its natural time. Okay. And again, that is because um cosmically, I believe that there is some sort of barrier between this world and the next world, um and the soul needs to be at a certain amount of peace to make it into the next world. So it needs to be somewhere uh, above, from my research, the level of, if we look at the scale, this is the scale of consciousness, so you need to be above the level of courage to 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 be in a positive state and to be able to break this matrix net. So that means, unfortunately, doing the hard work and having the courage to live out this life through all of the difficult times, and just have faith that um you know, you are powerful enough to change your situation without trying to escape it completely. Because to do so, you would have to be in a place of fear or grief or apathy, or even lower than that. And that's when the soul doesn't have enough energy to break through the metaphorical matrix net, and it gets stuck in reincarnation. That is why the world is the way it is, and that is why this life is designed to keep us in fear or below, through all of its uh mechanisms and rules and backward societies that we live in. It's just to keep us in a lower state of fear, which is destructive. Fear and below is destructive for the soul, but it is good for the archons, because when you go through a reincarnation cycle, your memory gets wiped again, and then that's more energy that they can leech off of you, and can harvest from you, and they can, you know, make you work another terrible job for another 50 years, and you know, get more money from you, or you know, whatever it may be. So that is the way to exit the matrix. Is mental and emotional, not physical. Okay, we get brainwashed in this world that everything is physical. So hey, just got on. Guys, I'm gonna have to stop. I've been on here for nearly 3 hours, and it is past 12. It's past my bedtime. Okay, so any other questions, please leave it in, not in the chat, but in the comment section, and I will answer them in my next live stream. And I'll promise to go live more often. I was just a bit busy. So this is the last one. What are mental illness hallucinations according to the Gnostic theory of the soul trap? Is that peering into a deeper reality, or is it merely the person's brain chemistry? I think it is a bit of both. So I believe that the physical body is extremely fragile. So then it has to be built extremely rigid to be sort of cut off from the rest of reality. And I believe that spirit is so strong that not everyone's psyche is that rigid. So there's kind of like gaps in people's brain. Okay, so from one perspective, that could be a imbalance of brain chemistry, and obviously that is not helpful if they're seeing illusions that no one else can see, and they're vivid and stuff like that. But then on the other side of it, they are tapping into a reality beyond the five senses. Okay, so we're only told that we have five senses. Some people have a sixth sense, some people have a seventh sense. And rather than dismissing that, I would argue that that person is gifted, but reality, or this reality, is very invalidating to people's spiritual gifts, and it just gets put under the umbrella of mental illness. And what that does is when someone's reality is invalidated to that extreme, that can send them into psychosis, and that puts them in a state of fear. And I've just spoken about how these archonic entities, or these demonic entities, um, can enter into the human psyche, especially if they are in a state of fear or grief or apathy, which is where they just give up on life and give up on everything. That's when they can enter into the psyche and the human body, and they can start causing chaos. And I feel like that's when those people that do have hallucinations like schizophrenia, or other uh, mental illnesses along those lines, that's when they start acting out, and they start acting out of control. Is because they've been invalidated, they've been put into a state of fear, because they're realizing that not everyone can see what they can see. And because they are so afraid by that, or some countries might call that witch, say they're a witch, or whatever it might be, that can send them into psychosis, and that is what causes the depression and the anxieties, and the um causing them to act out of character. So it's really important that we don't invalidate ourselves, we don't invalidate our gifts, or dismiss. I believe that we shouldn't dismiss people that say that they see certain things or consent certain things, because it ultimately just causes more, or dope them up with drugs or whatever it might be from the pharmacy, because I think that it causes more um problems than anything else. And I think it's just a symptom of living in a society that doesn't allow us to express spirituality unless it's in a very specific way. um I'm getting a lot of spirit, right? I said it's going to be the last question. I'm getting a lot of spiritual parasites and harassments since I woke up. How do I protect myself? Okay, this is definitely the last question. Jazzy Cat. um Number one, tell me about it. um this happened to me, and then just for a long time I tried to deny my spiritual side. I feel like since I had my experience with psychedelics, it kind of like, oh, I feel like my brain is opened and I have this like direct line to God almost. That's the only way that I can explain it. And that's why um I can sit here and talk for 2 hours about this type of knowledge. I just feel like I can hear things in a way. Right. And for a long time I tried to silence that noise, and I tried to numb it the normal way that people try to numb things, and it got more and more extreme. And I just tried my best to be like everyone else, and they can always sense it when you're a little bit different, no matter how much you try to mirror people or mimic people and whatnot. And I was always getting attacked oh gosh, all the time, um in jobs, friendship groups, stuff like that. And I just had to learn boundaries. So instead of keeping all of my knowledge to myself, I just took a chance, and I tried to share it with people, and I tried to share it with the world. I started off on TikTok. I don't have a TikTok anymore because that app annoys me. But I started off on TikTok, and I got a lot of sort of good feedback from you guys, and I came onto YouTube as well and got way more positive feedback than I ever expected. And that just gave me, so you guys have helped me so much. It gave me that boost of confidence, and I've carried on speaking about my experiences and whatnot. And that confidence has kind of like flowed over into my personal life. And I can tell when people have got narcissistic tendencies, or when they're jealous, or um even I don't like I feel like I have the ability to manifest quite well. Like I have a good job, but I have a good life for myself. I have, I'm quite comfortable where I'm living, and that's because I kind of tap into the energy of manifestation, and that creates a lot of jealousy, especially because I don't come from like no sort of well off background or anything like that. So whatever it might be, people are always gonna pick up on the fact that you're different, or that you've got like a spiritual side, or that you think outside of the box. And you kind of just have to accept that you're not for everyone. If you're from like a small town or something like that, the people aren't going to get it. If people have grown up with a certain doctrine, that they've been told since they were born, then they're not gonna where have I gone? They're not gonna get it. And you just have to sort of, sorry guys, where's my picture gone? You just kind of have to accept that those people are not your people, and put yourself out there on the internet. I would say, if you feel like you're a little bit different from everyone else, then expand your reach. We've got um so many different social media channels, so many different people who are crying out for help. Believe me, you probably it's the universe's way of just saying that this isn't your space, and you're probably meant for something bigger. So if you've got a talent, if I don't know, if you're an artist, if you're a spiritual person, put yourself out there. It doesn't have to be online. If you don't want it to be online, it can be just cutting off your friendship group, and being more social in a different area, whatever it might be. But if you notice that these people are coming from for you, which they will, if especially if you've got like a talent or something like that, um have boundaries. Don't put up with it. Don't be too nice. That is another it's another sort of trap that spiritual people fall into, being too nice, too forgiving, just letting anyone in, because we kind of have this desire to help everyone and help the world. And you know that's not what it is. You kind of if you're a creative person, especially, you kind of just have to put your stuff out there and allow people to help themselves or not. Don't be a people pleaser. Don't try to water yourself down if you've got like a certain message. Just be yourself, be as authentic as you can be, and have as much confidence in yourself as you can. Okay, because I promise you, if you know, no one no one attacks someone who's harmless, yeah, or hasn't got something that they want, should I say, like that. You know, if you were just a no one, then they would just ignore you. The fact that if anyone's giving you attention, whether it's positive or negative, it's attention. So you kind of just have to find a way to turn that negative attention into something positive and something that benefits you. Okay, guys, it's nearly 1 a.m. Okay, thank you so much for all of your questions. I really appreciate you guys. Okay, like I've said, you guys have given me a lot of confidence, and you know, I love coming on here, especially on YouTube and on these lives, because I can speak to you one to one as well. And I'm realizing that's my favorite thing, is just connecting with you guys and hopefully helping you, and hopefully you have learned something from me. This live will be saved. Uh thank you. Um thank you everyone for your hearts and your support and everything. It means a lot, but I have got to go to bed. Um I've got to get up tomorrow. It's not going to be good. I've got to get up in the morning. But you know, I'll do anything for you guys, and I promise I'll be back on live for you soon. I will go back through all the comments, and I will make sure I answer all of your videos, if I mean all of your questions in the next video if I have missed it, just to make sure. If you've got something burning, put them in the comment section in this video, and um I will go through them, and I will try my best. Okay. But yes, thank you everyone. I appreciate you. I wish I didn't have to get up for work in the morning, but I do. I have to plug into the matrix and get this money. So yeah, thanks so much, guys. Have an amazing night from wherever you are, or the amazing rest of your evening. And I promise I will be back soon. Okay, peace. Mm.